The moment Elena slid that heavy manila folder across our kitchen table, I already knew my world was about to crack. She didn't look up as she said I had 72 hours to report to Red Mesa, the post everyone in uniform called the graveyard. My fiancée hadn't warned me she was recommending me for this exile, and worse, she'd already signed the endorsement that made it official. I read the final line of the order, then quietly saved a copy of both the order and her signed recommendation to my personal drive, an instinct I couldn't explain, but one that would matter later. Then I took off the ring she'd given me, setting it between us like a small silver bomb. Elena's eyes locked onto that ring, and her voice came out sharp. "What are you doing?" I met her gaze. "Reading the part you forgot to tell me about." Her jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle twitch. And the kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant drone of traffic 6 floors below. 2 nights earlier, we'd eaten dinner at that same table while arguing over wedding invitations. My mother had already booked her flight. Her sister had ordered a dress, and we'd put down a deposit on a tiny venue overlooking the river. Now none of that seemed to exist anymore, as if it had all been a dream I'd woken from too suddenly. She tapped the reassignment order with one finger, trying to sound calm. "It's 18 months, Nathan. Red Mesa is supposed to be a 12-month hardship rotation. The power modernization project is behind schedule," I said, "so you recommended 18. She nodded, her voice flat. "I recommended the officer best qualified to fix it." I flipped to the second page and read the sentence that made my blood run cold. Operational continuity requires Major Nathan Mercer to remain unavailable for headquarters planning assignments for the duration of the Red Mesa stabilization mission. That had nothing to do with electrical systems, it was a cage designed to keep me out of the Joint Logistics Planning Directorate, and it conveniently opened the very position I'd been selected for, the same one Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Cross had been eyeing. I looked at Elena and asked, "Does Adrian get my billet?" Her expression shifted just enough to give me the answer, and I pressed. "Nathan, does he?" "He is next in line," she said quietly. "He wasn't next in line yesterday," I shot back. "My selection was signed." Selections can be amended, apparently. She stood up, her posture rigid, and I remembered that Elena was 41, 6 years older than me, one of the youngest colonels in Sustainment Command, built her career on making decisions faster than anyone else in the room. People admired her for that, I had too, but the problem with decisiveness is that sometimes it lets you stop examining whether the decision is right. She crossed her arms and said, "This is exactly what I was worried about." "What?" I asked. "You're making a professional issue personal because Adrian is involved." I almost laughed, but instead I unlocked my phone and opened the message I'd received 11 days earlier from Colonel Mason at Joint Logistics. "Congratulations, final staffing approval should be released Friday. Looking forward to having you on the team." I turned the screen toward her. "You knew I had been selected." Her eyes flickered. "I knew you were being considered. You attended the staffing conference." "That conference covered 23 positions," I said. "And this one?" "Yes. Adrian asked you to intervene." She hesitated, then said, "He raised legitimate concerns about what?" "Your judgment." That one landed like a punch. I sat back. "My judgment," she continued, her voice colder now. "He believes your objection during the Sand Viper exercise was unnecessarily disruptive. His routing configuration shut down the reserve power controller during a live communications test. It was a simulation connected to live infrastructure," I reminded her. "No one was hurt because I killed the test. You embarrassed him in front of the evaluation team." "I stopped equipment from being damaged," I said. "You could have handled it privately." "I tried," I said, and I saw her look away. She knew I'd sent Adrian 3 technical warnings before Sand Viper, and he'd ignored all 3. During the exercise, when his configuration began feeding corrupted load instructions into the backup controllers, I terminated the test, and Adrian called it an overreaction. Elena called it a leadership problem. I called it preventing a fire. The investigation afterward never became formal because nothing had burned, no one was injured, and Adrian changed the configuration before the next test, but that should have ended it. Instead, 11 days later, my headquarters assignment vanished and Red Mesa appeared in its place. I picked up the ring for just a second, and Elena's shoulders relaxed. She thought I was putting it back on. I set it beside the reassignment order and said, "Keep it." Her face went still. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said. "Then stop acting like I'm exiling you. You recommended me for a hardship post without discussing it." Blocked me from a position I spent 3 years qualifying for, and wrote language keeping me out of headquarters assignments because you knew I would fight it. That's not the defense you think it is, she said. I made a command decision about the officer best suited for Red Mesa. I stood up. If that's what you say about your fiancé, then this conversation is easy. You don't have a fiancé anymore. She stared at me. For the first time that night, Colonel Elena Ward looked uncertain. Nathan, don't do this. I'm not the one who did it, I said. You are throwing away 4 years over an assignment. No, I said, my voice low. I'm refusing to marry someone who thinks she can make decisions about my life because she outranks me in a room where she should have recused herself. I am not in your direct chain of command. You were on the manpower panel that reviewed my assignment. Which is how you knew Red Mesa needed me and Adrian needed my vacancy. Her silence lasted too long, and I nodded once understood. She came around the table, her voice softer. Nothing is happening between Adrian and me. I didn't say it was. Then stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like I betrayed you. I picked up my phone and the reassignment packet. You did. She followed me into the hall, her voice pleading. Nathan. I stopped at the bedroom door, and she said, 18 months is not forever. Maybe she believed that was the problem, the distance, the heat, the old trailers, the broken air conditioning at a forgotten outpost 200 miles from the nearest city, but it wasn't. The problem was that the woman I intended to marry had decided my consent was optional. I opened the closet. I'll be out tonight. Her face hardened again. So that's it? You won't even talk this through? I spent 10 minutes asking you questions, you answered every one. I was trying to protect both of our careers, she said. Whose career did you protect when you gave Adrian my job? She had no answer. I packed one uniform bag, one duffel, my laptop, my personal files, and the watch my father gave me after officer training. Then I left the apartment key on the counter. Elena remained beside the table, the ring still sitting between us like an accusation. When I reached the door, she said, you are going to regret making a permanent decision because you're angry. I looked back. I'm not angry enough to stay. Then I walked out. I spent my last night before Red Mesa in a hotel near the installation. And I didn't call her. She called me 6 times, but I listened to none of the voice messages until morning. The first was angry, the second calmer, the third almost reasonable, and by the 5th she had returned to her command voice. You report to Red Mesa as ordered. We can discuss the rest when you stop reacting emotionally. I saved that message, not because I was planning revenge, but because something in that sentence bothered me. She had combined our engagement and my military assignment as though both were instruments she could manage. At 0600 the next day, I drove to Personnel Command and sat down with Captain Rachel Morgan, who reviewed my orders and frowned. She turned one page backward. Major, did you volunteer for Red Mesa? No, I said. Her eyes came up. This code says, Commander Priority Volunteer. Who entered it? She checked and said, request originated from Sustainment Command Manpower Panel. Can you print the routing history? She hesitated, then said, you're entitled to your assignment file. Then I'd like a certified copy. She printed 27 pages, and I signed the receipt on page 9. Elena's name appeared on page 13. And Adrian Cross appeared as recommended replacement for my joint logistics billet, the timestamps 4 minutes apart. I put that file in my bag. That was the first piece of evidence I deliberately preserved. 3 days later, I arrived at Red Mesa, and the place looked like someone had dropped a handful of concrete buildings into the desert and forgotten why. Wind pushed sand across the access road. 2 communications towers stood beyond the perimeter fence. One leaning badly enough to make me uncomfortable, and the main operations building had sun-bleached walls and an air conditioning unit that screamed every 20 seconds. A faded sign near the gate read Red Mesa Forward Support Station. And someone had written underneath in permanent marker, welcome to the end of your career. Sergeant First Class Marcus Bell met me outside headquarters. He was 46, broad-shouldered, permanently sunburned, and unimpressed by rank. Major Mercer, he said. That's me. He shook my hand. Bell, Facilities and Signals Maintenance. You brought sunscreen, too? Bottles, not enough. He took one of my bags. How many people? 38 permanent, another 12 rotating through. Power situation? Bad. Water? Worse. Communications? He looked toward the leaning tower. Depends how religious you are. I smiled for the first time in 3 days. Show me. Red Mesa had 3 diesel generators, 2 of which worked reliably, a battery system installed 8 years earlier but never fully commissioned, a solar array operating at 43% capacity, and a water purification unit whose control board had been repaired with a piece of wire that belonged in a toaster. The official project plan called for modernization. The actual budget barely covered keeping the place alive. I spent my first afternoon inside the power building with Bell, and at 1700 he pointed toward the door. "Sir, chow closes at 1800. I'm looking at the battery controller. It'll still be broken tomorrow, so will chow." He considered that, then said, "You're going to survive here." "I haven't decided if that's a compliment." "It is," I said. That night, I lay on a narrow bed in temporary quarters and listened to wind scrape sand against the window. My phone had service for exactly 11 minutes. Elena sent one message: report when settled, and no hello, no apology, no mention of the ring. I typed 3 different answers and deleted them all, finally writing, *, reported to Red Mesa at 0910, assignment completed as ordered. *. Her reply came 10 minutes later: "We need to talk about us." I looked at those words for a long time, then turned off my phone. The next morning, I started working. Red Mesa didn't care about my engagement. Didn't care that Adrian Cross had taken my headquarters billet, didn't care that Elena thought 18 months would teach me something. The post had concrete problems: heat, voltage instability, water loss, equipment failures, and people who had become accustomed to hearing that repairs would happen next quarter. I understood those problems better than I understood what had happened to my relationship, so I dealt with them. Within 2 weeks, Bell and I discovered that the battery system wasn't defective. It had been installed with firmware that couldn't communicate correctly with the generators. The replacement cost on the books was nearly $2 million. But the actual fix required a software bridge and 3 new control modules. I submitted the technical package. Regional engineering rejected it, too unconventional. I resubmitted it with failure data. Rejected again, so I called the manufacturer, obtained compatibility certification, collected 72 hours of load measurements, and submitted it a third time, approved 3 months after I arrived. Red Mesa stopped losing power every time afternoon demand peaked, and the first night the generators transitioned cleanly to battery support, Bell stood beside me in the control room and watched the green light stay green. "That's suspicious," he said. "Everything works." "Give it time," I said, and he grinned. Word spread, not far. Red Mesa wasn't important enough for that, but people on the post noticed. The kitchen stopped losing refrigeration. The medical room stopped rebooting equipment. The communication section stopped scheduling critical uploads around generator failures. And I stopped thinking about Elena every hour, then every day, then almost every week. She called twice during my first month. I answered the second time. "How is it?" she asked. "Hot," I said. "I mean the assignment?" "Busy." She exhaled. "Nathan, are you going to do this forever?" "Do what?" "Talk to me like I'm a stranger." "You made yourself my assignment authority. I'm keeping the relationship professional." "I told you I don't want that," she said. "You made a different decision." "I made one recommendation that changed my career." "You'll recover." "I already am." Silence, then she said, "Adrian is doing well at Joint Logistics." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. "Good for him. I thought you should know there was no conspiracy." "I didn't say there was a conspiracy. You implied that I moved you so he could have your position." "The routing history says exactly that." Another silence. "What routing history?" "My assignment packet." "Nathan, you requested the internal routing?" "I requested my records. Why?" "Because they belong to me." Her voice sharpened. "Are you planning a complaint?" "Should I?" "Don't answer a question with a question. Then don't ask one you're afraid of." She ended the call, and that was when I understood something. Elena wasn't worried that I hated her, she was worried that I had documentation. A month later, I received my first officer evaluation from Red Mesa. My immediate rater, Lieutenant Colonel Howard Pike, wrote that I had restored critical power continuity and reduced fuel consumption by 19%. But my senior rater block contained one sentence that didn't fit. Major Mercer remains technically capable but should demonstrate greater trust in senior leadership before consideration for strategic level assignments. I read it twice. Pike read it over my shoulder and said, "I didn't write that." "I know," I said. Senior rater comments had come from regional sustainment, and the regional commander had added that sentence after receiving input from Elena's headquarters. Pike swore softly. "Do you want to challenge it?" "Yes." Most officers feared challenging evaluations because it could mark them as difficult, but I'd already been marked, and there was no reason to pretend otherwise. I submitted a formal rebuttal, attached my performance metrics, attached the Sandviper technical warnings, attached the assignment routing history. I didn't accuse Elena of retaliation, I simply stated the facts. 3 weeks later, personnel rejected my appeal because the language was considered subjective professional judgment, but the packet remained in my record, and so did the documents that mattered later. At 6 months, Red Mesa received a civilian engineering team to investigate water losses, led by Dr. Maya Bennett, who was 34, wore steel-toed boots that had seen more fieldwork than most soldiers' combat boots, and introduced herself by criticizing our well map. "This survey is wrong," she said. I looked at it. "It predates me." "Good," she said. "I didn't want to dislike you in the first 5 minutes." Belle coughed to hide a laugh. Maya spent 2 weeks crawling through pump stations, inspecting pipes, and taking soil samples. She had no interest in my personal life, which was one of the reasons I liked working with her. We argued about groundwater recharge rates, argued about whether one of the storage tanks could be rehabilitated, argued about where to place new leak sensors. Then we tested everything and discovered we were both partly wrong. On her last day, she handed me a revised map. "You've got a buried line losing approximately 8,000 gallons a week." "That much?" "Probably more. Why didn't anyone detect it?" "Because the soil drinks it before it reaches the surface." "Can we isolate the line?" "Yes, but you'll lose Building 6 for 2 days. Building 6 is storage." "Then congratulations, you have an easy decision." I called Belle, and 48 hours later the leak was repaired. Water consumption dropped 12%. Maya sent me a one-line email, "try not to break anything until the next survey." I replied, "No promises." That was all. I did not fall in love with her. I was still learning how not to measure every human interaction against Elena. At 8 months, Adrian Cross arrived at Red Mesa. Stepping out of a government vehicle wearing clean desert boots and the expression of a man visiting somewhere beneath him. I was in the operations building reviewing a load forecast when Belle came in. "Sir, you've got company." I looked through the window. Adrian was speaking to Pike, and my stomach tightened, not because I was afraid of him, but because the last time I'd seen him, he was accepting congratulations for the headquarters position that should have been mine. I walked outside, and Adrian smiled. "Nathan, Lieutenant Colonel," still formal. "We're at work," I said. He glanced around. "Quite a place." "It functions." "I heard you fixed the power." "We fixed several things." He nodded. "Elena said you would make yourself useful." That sentence told me exactly why he'd said her name. He wanted to see whether it still hurt. It did, but I just didn't give him the satisfaction. "What brings Joint Logistics to Red Mesa?" I asked. "Network integration review that belongs to Regional Signals. We're standardizing across forward sites," he said, opening his folder. "I'll need access to your infrastructure controller." "No." His smile disappeared. "Excuse me? You can have read-only access to the monitoring layer, not control access." "I'm leading the review." "That doesn't change cybersecurity policy." "Nathan, don't make this difficult." "I didn't write the policy. Show me your authorization." He handed me a letter that authorized data collection, not system modification. I gave it back. "Read only." His face hardened. "This is the same problem you had during Sandviper." "What problem?" "You always need to prove you're the smartest person in the room." "No, I need written authorization before I give someone control of critical infrastructure." "You know exactly who I am. That's why I'm asking for paperwork." Belle stood 10 feet away pretending to inspect a conduit, and Adrian lowered his voice. "You think keeping files on everyone is going to save your career?" I held his gaze. "From what?" For half a second, he realized he'd said too much, then he smiled again. "Still touchy." He walked away, and I watched him cross the yard. That afternoon, I requested that all network access during his visit be logged and preserved, not because I expected sabotage, but because he'd asked for privileges he didn't need. At 22:15 that night, an alert woke me. Someone had attempted to upload a configuration package through the temporary engineering account assigned to Adrian's team. The system rejected it. I went to operations in shorts and boots. Belle arrived 4 minutes later, and we pulled the logs. The package contained almost the same routing architecture I had stopped during Sandviper. I stared at the screen. "Save everything." Belle looked at me. "You know what this is?" "Yes." "You want me to call security?" First preserve the image, then security. The investigation began before sunrise. Adrian claimed the technician had accidentally pushed an old template. The technician, Captain Lewis, said Adrian had personally instructed him to test it. Adrian denied that, but Lewis produced a message, *use legacy Sand Viper configuration, Mercer blocked it last time. I want independent validation, *. There it was, not proof of a criminal act, but proof that Adrian knew exactly what he was doing. I copied the incident report into my official records. Pike forwarded it to Regional Command. Regional Command sent it to Joint Logistics. Then something interesting happened. Nothing. No inquiry. No formal safety review, no request for my Sand Viper warnings. 2 weeks passed, Adrian left Red Mesa, and Captain Lewis was quietly reassigned. I called Regional Inspector General and said, I want to file a protected communication. The officer on duty took my information, and I submitted both incidents, Sand Viper and Red Mesa, including network logs, Adrian's message, my original warnings, and the assignment routing package showing that Elena had recommended my removal immediately before Adrian received my billet. Then I waited. Elena called 3 days later. I knew before answering. Did you file with the Inspector General? Yes. Her breathing changed. You should have come to me. I did, before Sand Viper. That is not what I mean. I know you are connecting unrelated events. Then an investigation will show they're unrelated. Nathan, do you understand what you're doing? Documenting a safety concern. You are implying I retaliated against you. I submitted the records. You know how this looks. That's not my problem. She was silent, then she said something I never forgot. I put you at Red Mesa because I thought you could absorb it. I leaned back in my chair. What does that mean? Adrian was already under pressure, his promotion board, his divorce, the Sand Viper criticism. He was close to being removed from the planning track. And I wasn't? You were stable. So you damaged my career because you thought I could survive it? I didn't damage your career. You removed me from a selected billet and recommended a hardship assignment with a negative leadership comment attached. Another silence. I had never told her about the evaluation appeal. That meant she knew. Did that comment come from you? I asked. Nathan, did it? I provided professional input when requested. There it was. I opened a notebook and wrote the date and time. She heard the pen. What are you doing? Taking notes. Her voice went cold. You are turning every conversation into evidence. No, your decisions turned evidence into something I need. I loved you, she said. I closed my eyes, past tense. You don't do this to someone you love. I made a difficult choice. You made an easy one. Adrian needed protecting. I was the person you expected not to complain. He needed a second chance, and I was the price. She said nothing. I ended the call. The Inspector General inquiry moved slowly. Military investigations usually did. Weeks became months. Witnesses were interviewed, documents were requested, and I heard almost nothing. That was fine. I kept working. At 12 months, Red Mesa passed its first full infrastructure readiness inspection in 9 years. At 13 months, fuel consumption was down 28%. At 14 months, the water system stopped requiring emergency deliveries. At 15 months, Regional Command asked me to develop a resilience plan for 3 other desert installations. At 16 months, Maya Bennett returned with a larger engineering team. This time she brought coffee. Peace offering, she said. For what? The tank estimate. You were wrong by 4%. Exactly. I'm devastated. We worked together for 6 weeks, and somewhere between arguing about pump redundancy and eating terrible food in a dining facility, she became my friend. She learned about Elena by accident. Belle mentioned my old engagement during dinner, and Maya looked at me. You were engaged? Yes, recently, depends on your definition. Belle, traitor that he was, said, Colonel sent him here and took the ring with his career. I looked at him. Very nuanced summary. He shrugged, and Maya didn't ask for details. Later, while we were walking from the well field, she said, You know, you don't have to explain any of that to me. I know. If you ever want to, I'll listen. Thanks. Then she changed the subject, and that mattered more than she probably knew. At 17 months, my replacement orders were supposed to arrive. They didn't. I called personnel, and the assignment officer sounded confused. Your stabilization requirement has been extended 12 months. By whom? Regional request. Send me the authorization. An hour later, the document appeared, requested by Sustainment Command. Endorsed by Colonel Elena Ward. Reason: continuity essential during infrastructure expansion. I read it once, then again my hands did not shake. I printed the document, and Bell found me standing beside the printer. Bad news? Another year. He stopped smiling. You requested that? No, sir. I know. I called Elena, she answered immediately. I assumed you'd call. You extended me. Red Mesa needs continuity. Regional engineering recommended I rotate to Desert Systems Director. They can wait. You signed this without speaking to me. We are not engaged anymore, Nathan, this is an assignment decision. You are not my commander. I am responsible for regional sustainment readiness. You recused yourself from my personnel matters after the Inspector General inquiry started. A pause. Who told you that? The investigator. I did not select your name. Regional requested continuity. You endorsed it because it was operationally sound. Did you disclose our prior relationship on the endorsement? Silence. I already knew the answer. Elena? No. Thank you. For what? The answer. Don't do this again. Do what? Make another complaint every time something doesn't go your way. I looked through the office window at the desert. A year earlier, that sentence would have made me furious. Now it made me certain. I am filing an addendum. Nathan, you are participating in my assignment decisions while under review for your previous participation in my assignment decisions. That inquiry is baseless. Then paperwork won't hurt you. I am warning you. Don't warn me. My voice was quiet. You are not my fiancé, you are not my commander, you are a colonel who keeps inserting herself into my personnel file from now on. If you contact me about assignments, evaluations, promotions, or complaints, do it through official channels. She inhaled sharply. You don't get to dictate how I communicate. I just did. I ended the call, then I filed the addendum. The extension remained. The system did not magically correct itself because I had proof. That was another lesson. Evidence was not a weapon that made bad decisions disappear. Sometimes it was simply a rope you held while the institution slowly climbed toward the truth. So I stayed at Red Mesa, but I changed the terms. I requested transfer of rating authority away from Sustainment Command, approved. I requested written confirmation that Elena Ward and Adrian Cross would have no role in my future evaluations, approved after legal review. I requested that any extension beyond the additional year require personnel command approval rather than regional endorsement, approved. For the first time since arriving, I had a boundary the institution could see. My 18th month passed without ceremony. The wedding Elena and I had once planned would have happened 6 months earlier. I remembered the date only because my mother called. You okay? She asked. I'm working. That wasn't my question. I looked around my office. The air conditioning worked now. New digital panels showed stable power. Outside, soldiers were testing the automated leak sensors Maya's team had installed. I think I am. My mother was quiet, then she said, good. She never asked whether Elena had called. She had stopped hoping we would reconcile before I did. Maya's contract expanded, and she began visiting Red Mesa every few months. We became friends without trying. Then something shifted. Not dramatically, there was no grand confession under stars. One evening after a 12-hour inspection, we drove into the nearest town for food. The restaurant had 6 tables and a jukebox older than both of us, and halfway through dinner she said, I have a question. That's dangerous. Are you emotionally unavailable or just extremely slow? I nearly choked on my drink. She watched me over the rim of her glass. Those are different problems. I hadn't realized I was being evaluated. You've been under evaluation for approximately 8 months. What's my rating? Technically competent, cautious under interpersonal pressure. I laughed. She smiled, then her expression became serious. I like you, Nathan. I don't need an answer tonight. I just don't want to pretend I don't. I looked at her. For almost 2 years, every major emotional decision in my life had been shaped by one act of betrayal, and I had promised myself I would never let that happen again. But avoiding trust forever was another way of letting Elena make decisions for me. I like you too, I said. Maya nodded. Good, that's it. What did you expect? I don't know, fireworks, maybe a small parade. We're in a town with one traffic light, limited resources. Exactly. We started slowly, painfully slowly. According to Bell, Maya lived 3 hours away in Arroyo City. I was still stationed at Red Mesa. We saw each other when schedules allowed. I did not compare her to Elena. I worked hard not to. Maya never asked me to prove she was different. She simply was. When I received a call from the Inspector General 22 months after my reassignment, I was sitting beside a water tank reviewing corrosion reports. Major Mercer? This is Investigator Samuel Price. I walked away from the work crew. Go ahead. We have completed the first phase of your complaint review. I need to conduct a supplemental interview regarding assignment interference, retaliatory evaluation input, and the Red Mesa Network incident. My pulse increased. Understood. Can you report to regional headquarters next Thursday? Yes. Bring any personal records related to communications with Colonel Ward that you have not already submitted. I thought of the saved voice messages. I have several. Bring them. Regional headquarters was the first place I had seen Elena in almost 2 years. She stood outside the legal office speaking with a lieutenant colonel. Her hair was shorter, there were new lines around her eyes. She saw me, the lieutenant colonel walked away. For a moment neither of us moved, then she said, Nathan. Colonel. Her mouth tightened at the rank. You look well. So do you. It was not true, she looked exhausted. I heard about Red Mesa, the inspection scores. I nodded. Team effort. And the expansion proposal? Still under review. She took one step toward me. I didn't know they would keep you that long. I stared at her. You signed the extension, the first one. How many did you think there were? Her face changed. What? I understood immediately, there had been another. I had not been notified yet. I went into my interview angry for the first time in months. Price sat across from me with a legal officer and a recorder, explained the process, and I consented to the interview. Then I handed him my newest documents. When he mentioned the extension, I asked, how many are in the file? He looked at the legal officer. 3 recommendations, 3, the original assignment, the 12-month extension, and the subsequent 6-month continuity request. Signed by whom? The last was signed by Brigadier General Harlan at Regional Command based on a staff recommendation from sustainment. Who wrote the staff recommendation? We are still establishing that. I knew Adrian by then. He had become Deputy Director for Strategic Logistics under Elena. The interview lasted 4 hours. Price asked about Sandviper. I described the error. And he showed me copies of logs I had never seen. The original archive controller data had been recovered, proving Adrian's configuration had issued contradictory power routing commands 17 seconds before I terminated the test. My objection had been correct. Price asked whether Elena knew. I said I sent her the technical summary the next morning. Did she acknowledge it? Yes, I produced the email, *received. We need to keep this from becoming a larger issue until Adrian has a chance to correct the configuration. Price read it twice. Why did you retain this? Because it concerned a safety event. Did she later tell the manpower panel that your conduct during Sandviper raised concerns about judgment? According to the routing packet, yes. He slid another document toward me. It was a staffing conference summary. Colonel Ward stated Major Mercer had become increasingly reactive when challenged and would benefit from operational seasoning away from strategic headquarters roles. Below that, Colonel Ward recommends Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Cross for joint logistics vacancy. I felt something inside me go quiet, not angry. Price watched me. Have you seen this before? No. Do you dispute the statement? Yes, because the conduct she cited was my decision to stop an unsafe test after 3 written warnings were ignored. The legal officer asked, was Colonel Ward aware of your personal relationship at the time she made this recommendation? She was my fiancée. Was that disclosed to the panel? I don't know. Price answered, it was not recorded. I sat back. There was the case, not romance, not jealousy, not revenge. A senior officer had participated in a personnel action affecting the career of her fiancé while concealing the relationship, used disputed conduct from a safety incident to justify removing him from a selected assignment, recommended her favorite subordinate as replacement, then continued influencing his evaluations and extensions. Even if every decision had been defensible individually, together they formed a pattern. Price asked about Elena's motive. I said, I can't testify to what she thought. Did she ever explain it? Yes, I played the saved call, her voice filling the room. I put you at Red Mesa because I thought you could absorb it. The investigator did not react. He simply wrote something down. Then the recording continued. Adrian was already under pressure. He needed a second chance. You were stable. Price stopped the audio. Is this recording lawful? Single-party consent in the jurisdiction where I received the call. I confirmed with legal before submitting it. The attorney nodded. It is admissible for administrative review. Price looked at me. Anything else? One thing. I handed him Elena's second extension endorsement. She contacted me afterward and told me not to make another complaint. Price's pen stopped. Exact wording. I documented it contemporaneously. He read my note, then asked, "Did you perceive that as intimidation at the time?" "Yes." "Do you now?" I thought about it. "I think she was afraid of scrutiny." That was the most accurate answer I could give. The investigation widened. I returned to Red Mesa. Life continued, and that was almost frustrating. I had spent months imagining that if the truth came out, something dramatic would happen. Instead, I had a pump failure the next morning. 2 weeks later, a sandstorm damaged a communications relay. A month later, Maya's truck got stuck near the West monitoring field and I spent an hour helping tow it out. The world did not organize itself around my grievance. That was good, because it meant I didn't have to either. At 2 years and 4 months, I was selected for promotion to lieutenant colonel. The notification came through Personnel Command. I read it 3 times. Bell walked into my office. "You look like somebody died." "I made lieutenant colonel." He stared, then slapped both hands on my desk. "That's what I'm talking about. Promotion isn't effective for 6 months. I don't care." He walked out and shouted loud enough for half the building to hear, "Mercer's finally too important for this dump." Someone cheered, someone else yelled, "Impossible." I sat there laughing. The promotion did not erase what Elena had done. It did something better. It proved my career had not ended where she sent me. Maya celebrated by taking me to the same little restaurant. She ordered a dessert neither of us wanted because, according to her, promotion requires bad cake. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table. "You know what I like most about this? The frosting. You didn't need this to prove anything." I looked at her. "What do you mean? You were already okay." That sentence stayed with me. A year earlier, I would not have believed it. I had measured recovery by what position I regained, what investigation found, what Elena lost. Maya was right. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped needing the old life to return to me. 6 months later, I pinned on lieutenant colonel. I did it at Red Mesa. I could have gone to regional headquarters, but I didn't want to. Bell stood beside me. Pike returned for the ceremony. My parents came. Maya came. There were no speeches about betrayal, no mention of Elena. I wanted the day to belong to the people who had actually been there. After the ceremony, Maya and I walked beyond the operations building. The desert was turning gold in the late afternoon. She looked at my new rank. "Very shiny. That's the official military requirement. You're going to become unbearable. Immediately." "Good. I hate gradual change." I stopped walking. She turned. I had been carrying the ring in my pocket for 2 hours. Not Elena's ring, a new one, chosen by me, paid for by me, attached to no old promise. I held it out. Maya stared. "Oh, that's not the reaction I was hoping for. Give me a second." "You do everything slowly and then ambush me in a desert." "Fair." She looked at the ring, then at me. "Are you sure?" That question mattered. Not "Do you love me?" Not "When is the wedding?" But "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Yes." "Then yes." We married 10 months later in a courthouse with 12 people present, no military uniforms, no command staff, no strategic networking, no career discussion. Bell wore a suit that looked physically painful. My mother cried. Maya's father forgot the rings in his car and had to run back through the parking lot. It was imperfect, and I loved every minute. By then, I had served at Red Mesa almost 3 years. Personnel offered me a conventional command billet at Regional Engineering. 5 years earlier, I would have accepted before finishing the sentence. Instead, I asked what would happen to Red Mesa. The station had become a test site for resilient power, automated water monitoring, and remote logistics systems. What we developed there was being copied at 4 installations. The answer was that Red Mesa would be folded into a new Desert Systems test detachment. A colonel at personnel said, "We need someone to command it." I smiled. "Is that an offer?" "It is." I accepted, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because for the first time, staying was my choice. That difference changed everything. The Inspector General investigation reached its formal findings shortly after my 3rd year at Red Mesa. I received the report because I was the complainant. The findings were careful, substantiated, failure to disclose conflict of interest during personnel recommendation, substantiated, improper participation in assignment actions affecting a former intimate partner, partially substantiated. Retaliatory personnel influence, substantiated, inadequate handling of safety concerns during Sand Viper, substantiated, *. Against Adrian Cross, unauthorized technical testing, misleading statements during internal review, and attempts to influence witness accounts. The report did not say Elena had exiled me because she loved Adrian, because there was no evidence of that. It did not call her evil, did not claim every decision she made was corrupt. It said something more damaging. She had allowed personal loyalty and command authority to contaminate professional judgment. Adrian had exploited that. He had repeatedly described my objections as emotional, knowing Elena already believed I was threatened by their closeness. Emails recovered from his account showed the pattern. Nathan cannot separate technical disagreement from personal insecurity. Nathan will challenge every decision if he stays at headquarters. A Red Mesa rotation gives everyone room. Elena had responded to one message: he will hate it, but he will handle it. That sentence hurt more than I expected, not because it was cruel, but because it showed how she had justified me as the safe person to sacrifice. Will handle it. I always handle things, therefore, she could give the opportunity to someone more fragile. She could move me farther, ask more, explain less, expect forgiveness later. Competence had become permission to hurt me. The final recommendation removed Elena from personnel oversight responsibilities pending command review. Adrian was relieved from his strategic logistics position. His promotion recommendation was withdrawn. A separate safety investigation began regarding 2 later incidents connected to configurations he had approved. Elena did not lose her rank immediately. Real institutions rarely deliver cinematic punishment. She received a formal reprimand, lost her regional command nomination, and was transferred to a non-command planning position while her record was reviewed. Adrian's consequences were worse because he had made false statements during the investigation. I read the report once, then I put it away. Maya found me cooking dinner that night. You got the findings? Yes, mostly substantiated. She waited. How do you feel? I stirred the sauce. Hungry. She smiled. That good? I think so. She came around the counter, kissed my cheek, then stole a piece of bread. The investigation had once felt like the most important unfinished business in my life. When it finally ended, I realized my life had already moved beyond it. Our first son, Luke, was born 11 months later. Our second, Caleb, arrived 14 months after that. I had not expected fatherhood to make military logistics feel simple. It did. A failing generator was rational. A 2-year-old screaming because his banana broke in half was not. Maya laughed at me constantly. You can manage 70 people in a desert. 70 people understand supply schedules. Luke understands supply schedules. He threw his cup because I gave him the wrong color. That's a procurement dispute. You're enjoying this immensely. My sons knew Red Mesa as the place with big trucks, loud generators, and Sergeant Major Bell, who had finally been promoted and considered it his duty to teach them words Maya did not approve of. The post changed around us. The old trailers disappeared. A new testing laboratory opened. The leaning communications tower was replaced, solar output tripled, the water monitoring system became a service-wide pilot program. Officers started requesting assignments there. The graffiti at the gate was painted over. Someone replaced it with a new line, *Welcome to Red Mesa. Bring solutions, *. I left it 5 years after Elena handed me the original reassignment order. Desert Systems hosted a regional resilience demonstration. Senior officers arrived from half a dozen commands, manufacturers brought equipment, engineering teams set up displays. We had spent 3 weeks preparing for it. Maya planned to stay home with the boys. Then the morning of the demonstration she called. Luke says Daddy has tanks. We don't have tanks. He has decided the mobile battery trucks are tanks. That is technically offensive. He would like to inspect them. Bring him. You sure? Absolutely. I did not check the visitor list again. That was why I did not know Elena was coming. I saw her at 10:30. I was standing beside a mobile microgrid demonstration with 2 generals and a civilian energy director when a group from Strategic Sustainment approached. Elena walked in the center, still a colonel, still composed, still unmistakably herself. 5 years collapsed into 1 second. The kitchen table, the reassignment order, the ring, then the moment passed. I continued my briefing. The system can island from the primary grid in under 90 milliseconds. During last month's test, we sustained mission load for 31 hours without generator support. The energy director asked a question. I answered. Elena stopped with the group. Our eyes met. I nodded. Colonel Ward. Lieutenant Colonel Mercer. Nothing in her voice betrayed anything. That was the professional thing to do. I appreciated it. The demonstration continued 20 minutes. Later, I moved toward the operations building. Bell intercepted me. You knew? No. Want me to accidentally create a scheduling conflict? I almost smiled. No. I could arrange a small dust emergency. I'm good. He studied me, then nodded. You are. That was when I heard Luke, Daddy. I turned, he was running toward me in tiny sneakers, one hand waving above his head. Caleb was behind him, moving as fast as his shorter legs allowed. Maya followed at a walk, carrying a bag large enough to support an infantry platoon. I crouched. Luke hit me hard enough to knock my cap crooked. Caleb arrived 2 seconds later and wrapped both arms around my leg. Easy. Luke pointed across the yard. Tanks. Not tanks. Big tanks. Battery trucks. Tanks. I surrendered. Find tanks. Maya reached us. You lost that argument before it started. I noticed. She kissed me, then fixed my cap. You look official. It's camouflage. Very convincing. Luke pulled on my sleeve. Show tank in a minute. I stood, Maya glanced past me. Her expression changed, not dramatically, just enough. Is that her? I knew without looking. Yes. Elena stood perhaps 30 feet away, she was completely still. She had seen everything, my wife, my sons, the life that had nothing to do with her. Maya looked back at me. You okay? Yes. It surprised me that the answer was true. Elena started walking toward us. Belle saw her and quietly found somewhere else to be. Maya shifted Caleb onto her hip. Elena stopped a few feet away. Nathan. Elena. Her eyes moved toward Maya. I said, this is my wife, Maya. For a second, the word wife seemed to strike her physically. Maya offered her hand. Maya Mercer. Elena shook it. Elena Ward. I know. There was no hostility in Maya's voice that somehow made the moment harder. Luke stared at Elena's uniform. Are you Daddy's boss? Maya closed her eyes briefly. I nearly laughed. No, I said. Colonel Ward works in a different command. Luke considered this, then pointed at my rank. Daddy boss. Elena looked at him, something in her face broke for half a second, not tears, recognition. How old is he? She asked. 3. And your other son? Caleb is 21 months. She nodded. Maya shifted the bag. We were about to receive a classified briefing on why those trucks are definitely tanks. Luke nodded seriously. Tanks. Elena almost smiled. I wouldn't interfere with that. Maya looked at me. I'll take them to the display, I'll join you in a few minutes. She understood, she did not ask if I was sure, she simply said, okay. Then she walked away with our boys. Luke waved at me. Caleb shouted something unintelligible. I watched until they reached Belle. When I turned back, Elena was looking at my wedding ring. You married? Yes. I can see that. Her voice sounded distant. How long? Almost 3 years. She looked toward Maya. She worked here, her engineering team supported the water project. I remember her name from the reports. I said nothing. Elena drew a breath. I didn't know you had children. There was no reason you would. No. People moved around us, officers, technicians, visitors, nobody paid attention. 5 years earlier, I had imagined this confrontation in 100 ways. In some versions, Elena apologized. In others, I told her exactly what she had cost me. Sometimes Adrian appeared and I humiliated him with evidence. The real moment was quieter. She looked tired. I felt calm. Finally, she said, I saw the new gate sign. Belle's idea. Of course, you built something here. We built something. I've read the reports. I waited. She looked toward the solar field. When I sent you here, this place was supposed to be a maintenance problem. It was. Now half of Sustainment Command is copying your systems. That's the job. She laughed once without humor. You always do that. Do what make the impossible sound administrative. I had no answer. She looked at me again. I owe you an apology. I said nothing, not to punish her, but because apologies should be allowed to exist without immediate rescue. I was wrong about Sandviper. I knew that earlier than I admitted. I know. I was wrong about Adrian. I know. I was wrong about the assignment. I looked at her. Which part? Her eyes dropped. All of it. That surprised me, she continued. I told myself Red Mesa needed you, it did. I told myself Adrian deserved the headquarters billet, I thought he did. I told myself you would be angry. But eventually understand why I made the decision. Her mouth tightened. The truth was simpler. Adrian was falling apart. and you weren't. I thought I could take something from you because you would survive. The same conclusion I had reached from the investigation, hearing her say it still mattered. I did survive. I know, that doesn't make the decision right. I know that, too. She looked toward Maya and the boys, and I thought there would be time? For what? To fix us. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. You told me 18 months wasn't forever. I remember, you were right. Her eyes met mine. It wasn't forever, she understood. I continued, but you assumed I would spend those 18 months waiting for you to decide when my anger was acceptable. I did, and when I didn't, you extended the assignment. Her face tightened. I thought keeping you away from headquarters would stop the complaint from becoming a career war. It made the complaint worse. I know you contacted my evaluators. I know you told me not to file again. I know. Each answer was quieter. She did not defend herself. 5 years ago, that might have changed everything. Now it only meant she had finally learned what the truth cost. I lost command because of it, she said. I read the finding. My promotion board was delayed twice. I said nothing. Adrian left the service last year. That was new. What happened? His administrative appeal failed. The later safety review substantiated 2 additional violations. He resigned instead of facing another promotion review. I nodded. Elena gave a tired smile. For years, I told myself he manipulated me. Did he? Yes, she paused, but that stopped being an excuse. That was probably the most honest thing she had ever said about it. He knew what I wanted to believe, that I was protecting a good officer, that you were too proud. That the tension between you was personal. He fed me exactly enough to make every decision feel reasonable, and you made them. Yes. No excuse, no qualification, just yes. She looked toward my family again. I thought I'd feel jealous. To you? No, her answer came slowly. I feel stupid. I did not know what to say to that. She laughed softly. 5 years ago, I had a man who trusted me enough to build a life with me, and I decided that made him the easiest person in the room to sacrifice. Her eyes returned to me. I don't expect forgiveness. I forgave you a while ago. She seemed startled. I continued before she misunderstood. Forgiveness isn't the same as wanting something back. The surprise disappeared. I know Maya isn't a replacement for you. I didn't think she was, and my sons aren't proof that I won. I know, this place isn't revenge. She nodded. I know, good. For a moment, we stood there in the heat listening to generators hum. Then Elena said, Are you happy? I looked toward Maya. She had Caleb on one hip and was using her free hand to stop Luke from climbing onto a battery trailer. Belle was encouraging him. Maya pointed at Belle and clearly threatened him with something. I smiled. Yes. Elena followed my gaze. Good, I believe she meant it. A major approached and told her their group was moving to the next demonstration. She nodded, then looked at me one last time. I am sorry, Nathan. I know. She turned to leave. I stopped her. Elena, she looked back. There is one thing you should understand. She waited. Red Mesa didn't teach me how to stop being difficult. A faint smile touched her face. No, it taught me that being difficult at the right time can save a lot of people from someone else's bad decision. For the first time, she laughed, a real laugh. That sounds like you. It is. She nodded once, then she walked away. I did not watch her for long. Luke was already shouting, Daddy, tank. I went to my family. The regional demonstration produced 2 adoption recommendations and 1 urgent request to deploy our microgrid package to a flood-damaged installation. Work became busy again. Elena returned to strategic sustainment. We did not exchange personal messages. 3 months later, I received an official request from her office for technical data. I answered through normal channels, professional, clean, nothing unresolved. That could have been the end, but consequences have long tails. 6 months after the demonstration, Personnel Command contacted me about the original Joint Logistics billet. The director, now a general, called personally. Lieutenant Colonel Mercer, we're rebuilding the planning directorate. Your name came up. We'd like you to consider deputy director. 5 years earlier, that job would have felt like restoration, proof, vindication. The career returned. I asked for 48 hours. That evening, Maya and I sat on our back porch after the boys went to sleep. You want it? She asked. I don't know. That's not true. I looked at her. She waited. I smiled. I don't. Then why are we having this conversation? Because I used to want it more than anything. Used to? It feels strange saying no. Would you be saying no because of Elena? No. Would you be saying no because you're afraid of headquarters? No. Would you rather stay at Red Mesa? Yes. She shrugged. Then congratulations, you've discovered free will. I laughed. It may ruin my career. Your career seems unusually resistant to ruin. I called the general the next morning. Sir, I'm grateful for the offer, but I'm declining. Can I ask why? I want to stay with Desert Systems. You realize this is the kind of position people wait years for. I do. There was a pause. 5 years ago, you were selected for the directorate. Yes, sir, I've read the file. I assumed most officers in your position would want the seat back. 5 years ago, I wanted that seat because I thought it was the only direction success could take, and now? Now I know better. The general was quiet, then he said, fair answer. 2 months later, Desert Systems became a permanent command program. I was selected to lead the expansion. No secret inheritance. No general father, no billionaire sponsor, just 5 years of reports, failures, inspections, repaired systems, field tests, preserved evidence, and refusing to let one bad assignment define what came next. That mattered to me. During the expansion, Bell finally retired. His ceremony was held beside the power building we had rebuilt together. He had served 28 years when it was my turn to speak. I kept it short. Sergeant Major Bell taught me 3 things when I arrived at Red Mesa: always carry more water than you think you need, never trust a generator that suddenly becomes quiet, and if someone tells you a place is where careers go to die, ask whether they were too lazy to build something there. Bell wiped one eye and claimed it was dust. Afterward, he pulled me aside. Sir, you can stop calling me that now. Not happening. He glanced toward Maya and the boys. You know something? What? I remember the day you got here, so do I. You look like a man who had his house burned down. That's dramatic. Accurate. He nodded toward the new laboratory. Turned out you were just standing on empty land. I understood what he meant. Losing one future had felt like losing the future. It wasn't. I had simply not imagined the others yet. A year later, Elena's name appeared in a promotion announcement. She had finally been selected for Brigadier General. When I saw it, I felt nothing sharp, no anger, no satisfaction, no fear that the institution had forgotten. Her reprimand had cost her years. She had served in restricted roles, completed remedial command training, and rebuilt enough professional trust to move forward. People were allowed to recover from their mistakes. That did not require the people they hurt to return. I said one line through official correspondence: congratulations on your selection. Her reply came the next day: thank you, I mean that. Nothing else. I closed the message. Life continued. Luke started school, Caleb developed an obsession with aircraft, Maya became director of a regional water resilience program and spent half her time reminding people that deserts did not care about PowerPoint presentations. I was promoted to colonel in my 20th year of service. This time I almost refused the ceremony. Maya threatened me: your parents are already coming, they don't need a ceremony, your sons have spent 3 weeks practicing salutes, that makes me want it less. She put both hands on my shoulders. Nathan, yes, let people be proud of you. That was another thing I had learned slowly: boundaries were not walls, independence did not mean refusing love. So we held the ceremony. Luke and Caleb pinned the rank badly. One eagle was crooked. I left it that way through the entire reception. After everyone went home, I stood outside headquarters as the sun dropped behind the desert ridge. The original Red Mesa sign had been preserved inside the building. Welcome to the end of your career. We kept it because history mattered, not as a warning, as evidence. Maya joined me outside. The boys are trying to convince your father they need dirt bikes. They don't. I told them to ask you. Traitor. She leaned against me. Big day, Colonel. Apparently, you thinking about her? I knew who she meant. No, then I considered it, maybe a little. Maya waited. Not the way you mean. What way do I mean? The beginning. She looked out across the solar field. Kitchen table. I've told you that story too many times. I've heard worse. I remember thinking everything had just been taken from me. Some things were, yes, that mattered, too. I never wanted to rewrite the past as a gift. What Elena did was wrong. The assignment damaged my career. It cost me time. It cost me trust. It forced me to fight battles I should never have had to fight. Red Mesa becoming meaningful later did not excuse how I arrived. Pain did not become justified simply because someone grew afterward. But growth could still belong to me. I looked at the buildings, the new laboratory, the operations center, the water tower, the microgrid that had started with a broken controller and a rejected proposal. I thought surviving meant getting back what I lost. Maya took my hand. And you were wrong. She smiled. You technically wrong, don't tell anyone. Career ending. I laughed. We walked toward home. A month after my promotion, I attended a regional command conference. Elena was there, Brigadier General Ward now. We passed in a corridor between briefings. She stopped. Colonel Mercer. General. Her eyes flicked to my rank. Congratulations. Thank you. I heard you decline joint logistics twice. Once. They offered twice. I ignored the second email. She smiled. Still difficult professionally. For a few seconds, we were simply two officers who had survived different consequences of the same mistake. Then she said, I met your sons only once, they remember you. That surprised her. Really? Luke remembers every uniform with stars or birds, no stars when he met me. He has promoted you retroactively. She laughed, then became serious. Nathan, I never thanked you. For what? The investigation. I stared at her. I don't think you're supposed to thank the complainant. I'm serious, I know. She looked toward the conference room doors. If it hadn't happened, I would have kept making the same kind of decisions. Maybe I was good at convincing myself that efficiency made me right. I hurt people because I believed competent people could absorb more damage. I said nothing. She continued. I don't do that anymore. Good. I wanted you to know, I appreciate that. Someone called her name from down the corridor. She started to leave, then stopped. Your wife seems formidable. She is, and your boy's criminal. She smiled. I'm glad you built a good life. I looked at her. I didn't build it because of what happened. I know, I built it after what happened. Her expression softened. That's better, it is. We shook hands, then we went to different rooms. That was the last personal conversation we ever had. Years passed. Red Mesa became larger than any of us had imagined. The systems developed there were deployed after hurricanes, fires, floods, and infrastructure failures. Young officers arrived because they wanted the assignment. Some were ambitious, some were brilliant, some were difficult. I especially liked the difficult ones. Whenever one of them challenged a plan, I made them explain why. If they had evidence, I listened. If they were wrong, we corrected them. If they were right, rank did not change the physics. That principle sounded obvious. It wasn't always practiced. One afternoon, a young captain stopped a test 10 minutes before a visiting general arrived. The project manager was furious. Sir, this will embarrass us. I looked at the captain. Why did you stop it? She handed me the diagnostic tablet. Thermal runaway risk in the secondary battery rack. The project manager said, the sensor is probably bad. Probably? I asked. He stopped talking. I reviewed the data. The captain was right. We delayed the demonstration. The general waited. Technicians found a damaged cooling valve. If we had continued, the battery rack might have overheated. Afterward, the captain apologized. For what? Stopping the demonstration in front of everyone. You prevented an equipment failure. I know, sir, but the timing. Captain, she straightened. Yes. Sir, never apologize for making someone important wait when the alternative is letting something dangerous continue because you're afraid of embarrassment. She nodded. Understood. I watched her walk away. For 1 second. I saw Sand Viper, Adrian's configuration, my hand on the emergency termination control, Elena's anger afterward. You embarrassed him. 5 years of my life had started there, maybe more. I returned to my office. On a shelf behind my desk sat 3 framed documents. My commissioning certificate, the first Red Mesa readiness report, and the original reassignment order. People sometimes asked why I kept it. I always gave the same answer, because that's where this command started. That was true, it just wasn't the whole truth. The order reminded me that official paper could be wrong, a colonel could be wrong, a fiancé could be wrong, a promotion panel could be wrong, I could be wrong. The signature at the bottom of a page did not make a decision. Wise authority did not remove the obligation to question. Love did not remove the right to say no. Years earlier, Elena had believed sending me to Red Mesa would teach me how to accept decisions I disliked. It taught me the opposite. It taught me to examine them, document them, challenge them when necessary, and most importantly, refuse to let someone else's decision become the final definition of my life. One evening near the end of my command, Maya brought Luke and Caleb to the post. They were old enough now to understand that the mobile battery trucks were not tanks. They still called them tanks because it annoyed me. We walked past the gate together. Luke read the new sign aloud. Welcome to Red Mesa, bring solutions. Caleb pointed toward the old sign displayed inside the visitor center. What did that one say? I looked at it. The end of your career. Maya looked at me. I smiled. It said people used to misunderstand this place. Luke frowned. How? They thought being sent here meant your life was over. Was it? No. Caleb asked, Did you want to come here? Children had a way of finding the question adults avoided. No, then why did you stay? I looked at Maya, then at the station, then at my sons. At first, because I had orders, and later, because later it was my choice. Luke accepted that immediately. Children understood the difference better than some adults. He ran toward the display yard, Caleb followed. Maya slipped her hand into mine. I watched our sons race across the same ground where I had once arrived, carrying one duffel bag, a broken engagement, and a personnel file someone else had tried to rewrite for me. I had spent years believing the most important moment of my story was the night Elena sent me away. It wasn't. The most important moment came later, again and again, every time I realized I could choose what happened next.